Hello, storytellers, storytelling run, and I want to talk to you about For the Lord RPG, a Christian RPG. How do you do a Christian RPG? This is for GMs, grandmasters, game masters, grand ministers rather. How do you do? First, you get a D20. Oh yeah, plus some other dice. But stories, and settings. First off, don't get nervous because you get to play all the idiots. You get to play all the idiots. You get to play the monsters, the bad guys, and you get to play them stupidly. So you don't have to be. You don't even have to be theologically sound. Grounded. You can play the dolts. The fools, as God classifies them. So you play the pagans and stuff. And when you do play, say, the bishop or cardinal, they're just giving them missions or telling them to go investigate and save souls and plant churches. That's basically it. So when you go out to these places, or when they go out and adventure and investigate, you're playing pagans. So you can play them in a silly. I always play them in a silly way, and all having their own fixations, and and then for the Lord RPG, there's charts you can roll on if you want to fill out the characters and their emotions. You can play it on the wing as they do their thing and their agenda as they go around evangelizing and adventuring. So, but you can also, what I want to do right now is show you settings you can use, legit settings you can use in your game. And my rules are very open-ended so that you can adjust the setting to anything. And I have everything you need, as far as the weapons, types of armor, modern day, medieval times, fantasy-ish. It's all earth-based. I mean, that's kind of the main rule, earth-based, because the earth and the Bible have that relationship. So, but we can push the boundaries of the settings to be fantastical, to be mythological, folklore, to have fun and to entice kids to play it, because the goal here is to get them to speak the gospel in the game and make mistakes and keep trying over and over and getting used to it and having fellowship and then turning it into a ministry. That's the goal of this game. And storytelling, we all, including Pilgrim's Progress, including the Narnia Chronicles, we all want to stretch our reality and create some fun elements in there. And even use magic. And I don't mean magic, we don't use magic, but we confront magic as a life cheat type of thing. That's what I kind of call spells and magic spells. It's a life cheat. Whereas our blessings are all about helping people or helping each other and helping, for the will of God. We don't use our praying, our blessings, our protections, our healings to life cheat, whereas pagans use magic to life cheat, love potions, potions of strength, and potions or whatever, whatever the magic is, fireballs or whatever. They use it to have power over others. And my game in the settings, will you can use magic like demon possessed types of magic if you wanted, but the Christians should not be using the magic, right? We got blessings and stuff. Okay, so let me go over some settings that you can go crazy with and have fun with and do your thing with. And I just went to YouTube. Van Helsing. Let me make myself a little smaller here. Let me move myself over on this side. You can use Van Helsing. And I'm not gonna play the sound. I just want to show you bits of watch the movie Van Helsing. And it's actually about, Van Helsing fighting Dracula. There's Frankenstein, there's a werewolf, and there's a whole cult of vampires and followers, and the villagers are all afraid, and and he's got these cool magic, you can get, not magical, but cool gear. This looks like a +5 die rank crossbow. It's +5 die ranks to hit, and probably D12, D8 damage because of the auto firing. Oh, and it's got auto fire, so it's like a gun. So I take that back. It's probably like crossbow +2 die ranks to hit, and then does, these crossbow bolts probably do, I'm gonna say D10 AP2, auto 4. Pretty not AP2, just but they're pretty, well, it could be AP2. Yeah, it's pretty wicked. It's fantastical, but that's okay. Why not? But he actually, right here. He actually starts off in the Catholic Church, but that's fine. Catholics are welcome, but I mean, I'm hardcore Calvinist, but anyway, but Catholics are the least of my worries. Okay, but he goes to the Vatican, and underneath the Vatican, it's like Vampire Hunters. It's like a whole setup, you know. It's like a Quartermain or whatever, the 007 type of thing. So you could totally have this kind of cool little setup where they, you know, obviously in the regular For the Lord RPG, you set up churches along the way, and as you get successful, those churches could be places where you could get better weapons, better armor, blessings, new blessings, you know, et cetera, holy water, you know, whatever, you know, whatever kind of setting you want to create for your RPG. So Van Helsing, the movie, is an old fun movie where he fights a vampire and it's all magical, and you know, there's a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, Van Helsing is a magical. See, they got crosses in it, and this is Transylvania, and you could create a whole setting there and fight vampires, and they can have their magical powers. You know, I'm totally fine with that. You know, obviously the goal is to go to Transylvania and convert the people, because the people are obviously worshiping the vampire and you know, doing whatever the vampire says. So there's that. Okay, let's move on. Solomon Kane, 2012. Now these videos are kind of low risk because they're older movies, but from Robert E. Howard, by the way. And I think Conan the Barbarian. Do I have? Oh yeah, I have Conan the Barbarian on here. Can actually be utilized, but let me go back to this one. Solomon Kane is a very dark, grim Christian, and he, you know, you can have very scary villains in our game. Okay, I'm trying to move my face a little better. I don't know. You can have I'm gonna move myself over here. You can have very, very scary villains, right? Look at this. This is an orc, goblin, hobgoblin, anything you want. Humans can make the scariest monsters, and you know, and like sometimes people are like, oh, you know, they want to have orcs and trolls and stuff, but we can easily have that in our game. Just, you know, okay. You know, we can have sort of a misty, dark world and demonic things and magical weirdness. And look, you got to figure it out for yourself. You know, there's a big demon here, big fire demon, and he has to confront and sacrifice himself or whatever. You know, he gets crucified in this thing. And in the beginning, he really finds peace with these pilgrims, you know, helping them out. And of course, you know, they die or, you know, loses some. Then he goes to free them because of slavery, because the pagans obviously enslave everybody. So very Christian setting. You could turn this into a dark setting. And I read the whole Solomon Kane books by Robert E. Howard, and they only had like 1 or 2 in Europe, and the rest he went to Africa, which was kind of weird. It was interesting. I liked it. And I really liked reading it. And I here's the thing. I really loved reading the Solomon Kane, even though it was very strange, and he was not totally hardcore Christian. He was very, you know, he fought for the Lord, but he didn't know really why. I could tell Robert E. Howard was struggling with his faith, especially because evolution was on the you know, pounding everybody with their evolution in the 1920s and 30s, and they had no proof of it. But Conan the Barbarian, the books I've been reading, and I actually have a harder time reading them because there's no faith in it for me. There's no Christianity. He's doing these all big battles and fighting, and I'm like, so what? I just, you know, I like Conan the Barbarian. I love, I like swinging a sword, but I just didn't. There wasn't like a faith nugget in there in the Conan the Barbarian one, so I just don't feel it anymore. Because ever since I have been doing For the Lord RPG, I have been losing interest in every other hero, you know, out there, unless there's a nugget of Christianity in there, or a nugget of, you know, wanting to do something for others, sacrifice for others. So that's kind of what I look for. But anyway, Conan the Barbarian is obviously another classic movie, and I do like the movie, but it's very R-rated and all that, and really good pagans. You know, he's a pagan too, in a sense. I'm kind of just skipping through this just so you guys. But there's Conan the Barbarian. It's an R-rated movie, but you know, and supposedly Robert E. Howard's. This is sort of like maybe before the flood, or really right after the flood, right? That ancient history kind of concept, you know, just in a fantastical sense. But it's really pagans fighting pagans, and some having a sense of goodness in them, even though they don't know what good. You know, they haven't gotten Christ yet, or heard of God yet, or anything. But it's a setting, you know, you can use, or you can take it and finally have a monk or Christians come into this setting. Totally legit. You can totally have Christians finally come in and encounter these people, and then tell both sides or whoever, you know, hey, you know, we got this dude named Jesus, man. So you could, you know, kind of create a setting similar to this, you know, giant snakes, giant apes, I didn't include that. Let me just quickly include the King Kong movie in here because of the primordial coolness of that one. Let me just grab that one real quick. Okay, let me just talk about King Kong, and where they're in the jungles and they're fighting the primordial beasts, and there's a whole in the extended. You got to get the extended Blu-ray because it's got all these like 20 minutes of just I don't know, 20 30 minutes of just constant beast fighting, and it's pretty amazing. Like all these, this whole escape scenario right here was like 20 30 minutes, like all these different beasts. I would include every one of those in the game. Totally, the Christians going to these areas, like there's totally in Europe or Mediterranean or wherever they want to have the missionaries go. Like back then, especially primordial, very primordial. There's no history being written, so there totally be all these beasts that they're all in these pocketed areas, all in the dark ages of Europe, or so no lack of scary creatures to fight. And in my game too, you don't need greater and greater demonic super god things to fight. The characters are kept, their hit points, their vitality is kept down in the 20, 10 to 30 range. So anything can be very scary. You don't have to keep adding new creatures. You just add different creatures, but you don't have to keep increasing the stats, and then combat becomes weirder and weirder and crazier and more esoteric or whatever. And new players can jump in at any time because no one is like godlike or demigod-like in this game. I've solved that issue with the dice mechanics that I have in it. That's the thing. You gotta, once you get the dice mechanics, which are not that hard, they really aren't, but once you get them, this game solves all the issues of hitting 10th or 12th level and the characters becoming too powerful. You don't have that in my game because I have characters that are played 70 episodes now, and I'm still throwing regular creatures on them, and they're still kind of scary. They do better, obviously, but there's still risks. All right, this let me see if I can play this one. This, y'all recognize this one? League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And it has all this classic characters: Invisible Man, Dracula, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Captain Nemo, some others there, and Alan Quartermain. So these are all like the classic. I forgot what her Mina was. I think she's part Dracula too. And he's, I don't know if he's Dracula. Oh, he's Dorian Gray, not Dracula. Yeah, Dorian Gray. He has some powers, but she's actually a vampire. Oh, I ruined it for you. Sorry. Anyway, it's a good movie. It's fun adventure. Back when movies were movies. This is like a Suicide Squad. This is like the first Suicide Squad, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and it's a fun adventure and very. But I don't know if there's actually any direct Christianity in it, but it was made in a time when, and these all characters are all done by Christians, made by Christians. So this is very Christian in that sense, and and of course all the the exoticness of it all is very cool. I love the way they did this guy. I would love to see movies like with characters like that, like trolls or ogres or giants like that. So that to me is a legit ogre troll you can have in the biblical sort of giants. That to me is is what a giant really is like, or an ogre, then a giant's a little slightly bigger. But I really like this. This is the way, and this is to me, that arm is completely dangerous, right? That'll if they can actually use it, that'll crush you. Just like a frost giant or fire giant in D&D, because they have it's just kind of ridiculous. This is much scarier to me. A bear is much scarier to me than some abysmal demonic thing in D&D that's CR20 or whatever. Okay, so but this is a great influence and setting too. You guys, if you want to do this, you can do this. I have the rules for this. The apocalyptic game I have has rules for guns, of this sort of technology, and the vehicles and all that same sort of technology as this level of this, so you can totally do a setting like this. So this is a great movie. Fun movie. They all get together and fight some cool bad guy. Okay, Excalibur. Oops, let me turn off the sound. Excalibur, man, epic. I hope I can show all these trailers, these old trailers. But what I love this movie. Merlin's obviously a magician, but he's sort of like out with the pagans, and then Christianity takes over. But you all know this movie. I'm assuming. I have armor very similar to this movie, but this is made from aluminum. What do you know? Anyway, I love the green. I used to have a green light here, but anyway, the green hue. But Excalibur is a Christian story, right? They got to get the Holy Grail in the end. It's a Christian story. Love this thing, and it's all about sin and cool stuff like that, and the drinking from the Grail and blah blah blah. So you can do an Excalibur setting if you want, or something similar, chivalry and the Round Table and the Knights of the Round Table and now Knights of King Arthur. You could do that if you wanted. I don't have, I haven't made this sort of setting, so I don't really have that. But you can obviously get other role playing games to do it. But using the only thing I would ask you to use in mind is the whole church planning, evangelism, and church planning, because obviously during this period, when the knights are doing the Knights of the Round Table, and they just do adventure, but obviously there's monks and missionaries all here going around, and you can have the Knight of the Round Table being part of a mission, going around to villages and doing exactly the same thing as they're doing here, quests. But their quests are to evangelize and plant their church, or reestablish the church, or fortify the church, or heal or rebuild the church. But they could be in this sort of setting. I've got the rules for that. It's all there. The 13th Warrior is kind of a cool. I'm gonna turn off the sound. Is kind of a cool. Of course, he's Muslim. This guy, the writer. But he goes to Vikings, and the Vikings then deal basically with these scary cannibal pagans that are like all freaking scary. Yeah, look at that. That's kind of a cool shot right there. So it's like this big thing. I really love this film, except to be honest, at the end, the battle at the end to me was so disappointing. Only because they just didn't get the right crunch with the swinging and stuff. They kept doing swinging where they would swing and then you would just see a body fly, and you didn't really get the connection, the crunch of it. Like Braveheart did some incredible crunch fighting, and in this one they just didn't get that, and I was really disappointed because this came out right after Braveheart. But Braveheart had an incredible amount of crunch to the fighting and swinging and brutality, and this one didn't get that. But everything else about it was really well done. Just that. But the 13th Warrior is a cool way of you getting. See how they're all in bears? This is trolls or ogres or hobgoblins. This is like, to me, hobgoblins, because they're all in bear things. They're all big and cannibal-y and viral and feral, kind of dudes. And they come out at night, and they have a very sneaky, stealthy ability. So you could give them that kind of magic. They have a witch. They got a witch. She gives them powers. You could totally do that in this game. Totally legit in the Dark Ages. Totally legit in his paganism. In the Northman, I don't have it on here, but in the Northman, that Viking film, I really thought that was a good beginning. It was an okay film. It was okay. But I really liked the depiction that they showed of the Christians, because they showed the Vikings doing a ritual dance, which I have in my For the Lord RPG, the Dark Ages. I have a ritual. You could, like, the villains could, and the witches and the sorcerers do rituals with the Vikings to make them more warrior-like, and they had a whole dance where they did in there, a whole sequence there where they're all, whatever, doing their wolf thing. And the next day they go and fight, and they were just so powerful, and they totally killed all the Christians. They burned the children in the church, and they showed it. And I really love that they showed it, because they showed there's paganism right there. That's what they did over and over. And then they took whatever survivors they wanted and made them into slaves, and sold them off into slavery. That's what you do as a Viking. Until it's really cool to note that a Viking was converted, and then Christianity defeated the Vikings in the end. They converted a Viking, and then he kicked all the other Vikings' butts and forced them into conversion. He did force them, or intimidated them. And all's fair in love and war. All's fair in love and war. If you can convert one, and he did it willingly, boy, yeah, I'll take it. I don't care what pagans say. I don't care. He converted them. I mean, but you pagans are doing really well these days. I'm gonna have to give you that. Anyway, Soldier. Soldier is a sci-fi, very, very fun sci-fi movie. I'm just kind of skipping through, and it's about a genetically modified soldier guy. He's trained as a soldier, or not genetically modified, but he's grown and steroided or whatever. But he's a soldier. And they just do jobs or whatever. They're kind of a corporation, and then he's discarded and then thrown into a junk world, and then he ends up protecting the junk world. He becomes their protector. So and this is an Earth-based sci-fi. So obviously you can, and he ends up fighting the bad. He ends up fighting his own corporation that is there to clean up the junk world or something. So he's not a Christian, but they do celebrate Christmas. Legit Christianity right there. So, ta-da! You could have a Christian motif here. And there's survivors on that planet, which is totally akin to a Christians in space, like survivors on a planet, junk world. And then, I mean, who's the Christian? Who isn't? That's up to you. What kind of players you can have a soldier guy and the settlers, or you can have a missionaries coming into this settlement and helping these people. And then there's evil corporations coming to eradicate them, because it's their planet, kind of thing. This is a totally legit story scenario that you can add in the Christian motif to it. All right, aliens, ha ha. Free League, beware. We Christians can Christianize your aliens book. Any RPG that's Earth based, you can totally legitimately Christianize. Oh, this is a weird image. What I want to show here is this. They're talking here about the creature creator was surmising that the producer Ridley Scott, who kind of did this film. So remember, there's a Christian. The woman in here talks about her Christian faith. So and it's obviously from Earth. So you can totally have Christianity in this one. Now, what I like about this here that I kind of didn't know about is that they were trying to make it so that this guy, the android, gets the alien seed, and he's the one that started and propagated the aliens. That's sort of the storyline, how the aliens started originally, and the engineers obviously created it. Then he was able to steal it from them, and then go off and do it himself. But in My Christians in Space, right? How could you do this and sort of make it legit with the Bible and all that? Well, I would say that the engineers are actually genetically modified humans that were created by either super AI or the atheist, empire, and they were the ones that created the aliens, or the super AI. And then of course this new super AI, which is this android, comes along and steals it and creates his own alien world. And that's ta-da! But the engineers, to me, the engineers that are the mysterious sort of super race in the Alien series, are considered aliens, but which makes no sense because they just look like humans. So I would say that they're just genetically modified humans that the some super AI made earlier. And that totally fits with Christians in Space. So you can have an alien setting, or you could steal from them. I don't care. They wouldn't care anyway because we have Christianity in it, so we don't care. I mean, my point being is you can homebrew that. In my thing, I do have something similar to. Actually, I don't have these. I do have this. I mean, what I just explained. I have super AIs and mad scientists and the atheist empire who make all these different AIs, super AIs, who then go off and do all these mad scientist things and create different aliens and planets and terraform planets and stuff. That's how I make a legit Christian sci-fi and not undermining the Bible's authority, because life came originally from Earth, and even in my Christian space setting at 2500 AD. Now it could be 2600 AD. You could push it out a little bit or whatever, but I'm pushing for very close to today. In these settings, because to me 100 years is a huge difference, especially now. Like in my lifetime, there was no computers. In my lifetime, there was no computers. And look at today. Within my lifetime, there was no computers. So think about that. There was no cell phones. There was phones, but they were on the wall in the house and wired to a bunch of telephone wires, telephone poles. So you could do an alien setting if you wanted. Star Trek. All right. This is awesome. What Star Trek got right about Jesus. This is by David Wood. He's the guy that's fighting Islam. And that's why X-17 Apologetics re-upload? Something like that. Oh, well, David Wood has another channel that's bigger. I think this is something kind of a sub channel or whatever. But he does a lot against Islam, and the reason I don't attack Islam is because I consider Islam just a byproduct of us conceding to the left. If we would stop conceding to the left and use our faith all the time, Islam would automatically become weaker. Because that's what I grew up with. When I grew up in the 80s, 70s and 80s, Christianity was very strong. The left was very gentle and nice and open and, liberal. So they weren't really attacking Christianity as much as just, yes, Jesus is good, but we just need to be a little tolerant, okay? Just be a little nice. And we Christians like, oh, okay, yeah, we can be nice, sure. It'd be like that. But the fear of the Lord was still pervasive. And because of that, people used to go tour openly, freely, and sillylishly in the Middle East. There was no threats in the middle. I remember the teacher coming home back with all these slideshows showing us kids their trips to Egypt and what they did and how everyone there was so nice to them. Everybody loved Americans. And remember back then in the 70s, Egypt didn't have burqas. Iran was a very secular country. It looked, Lebanon was a very Mediterranean, looked like the French Riviera. All the Middle East, there were so many movies done in the Middle East. No big deals, like Star Wars, and Lawrence of Arabia, and all these films were done on an epic scale, and no terrorist issues, and no terrorist wars or nothing. And then Jimmy Carter came along and ruined it all. I mean, it started happening after that. So, okay. Anyway, this Star Trek episode called "Bread and Circuses" is about them encountering a modern Rome who has gladiators, and so they had to fight in the gladiator arena thing. And it turns out though that there's a whole huge Christian storyline underneath this all, and in the end, the killer gladiator wants to be a Christian. And there's a whole thing. It's pretty cool. You should watch this video or watch the episode. I actually never saw this episode when I was a kid. I thought I saw all the episodes. I've never seen this episode. Where did this episode go? I don't know. I think there was a controversy there. I don't know, but I've never seen it. I've never seen this episode, which is very strange. Have you? I've never seen this episode. I've never seen a gladiator episode of Star Trek. I just don't remember. I mean, either I've never seen it or I don't remember, but there it is. Anyway, so, but it's a whole Christian thing going on there. And, so anyway, Star Trek is Earth-based, so you can totally do a Christian thing there. Another one you could do, which I didn't put on here, but I'll just say it, is Starship Troopers. In one of the movies, they have a total Christian thing there where they all decide, we should use Christians because they actually want to fight. It's hilarious. It's a funny take on it, but I still I haven't watched it in quite a while, so I gotta watch it again. But Christianity is legit in Starship Troopers, so you can have a Christian Starship Troopers setting if you wanted. And that one to me is fine as far as it fits in Christians in Space. I mean, there's plenty of Christians in Space type of stuff that you could do that. All right, here's another weird way, but you could totally use this one. Wizards. Remember Peace? Wizards, Ralph Bakshi animated film. This is one of my first anime films I've seen as a kid, where I was like, man, I do not like Sesame Street. I don't like Disney. I do not. When I was a kid, I was like, this is what I like. I saw this on the big screen. I watched this over and over. Man, I love this film. This was so dark. I love this film. This one and Lord of the Rings by Ralph Bakshi was my mom's favorite films of all time when I was a kid. And this film is a dark futuristic, so it's the Apostles of the Epoch, but even crazier, way more gonzo. He's a robot, and there's like a wizard, and he's like Saruman, like he does like all this technical stuff, and there's all these weird goblins and mutants and stuff, and very crazy stuff. It's rated R, but no, it's kid though. But there's just some voluptuous stuff. There's even fairies, which are really cool in it, because it was like a nuclear, radioactive, whatever, and all these weird fairy things and all that. And the film is done in such a cool artsy way, weirdy way. But they did a lot of, and I knew it as a kid too. They did a lot of shortcuts to their animation and what they did. And see, there's even the Nazi. So the wizard here finds this old Nazi propaganda, videos, and that's his secret weapon. And he gets the goblin, the mutants, to be all riled up and fight with that. So it's a pretty, it's a great film. But this could be a setting, totally legit, and then the Christians are obviously coming out and discovering this world and having to go in and change it all. And so you could, we Christians have a hard time agreeing with each other on a lot of things. especially on storytelling and on how far we should take the story. How weird can we go with the story? And I've gotten a few people suggest things to me, and that's too weird. That's too off for me, you know. And what I want to say is, to each his own, right? My main point is, we need to glorify God. We need to glorify the church. We need to teach. We need to push evangelism, and we need to put the church in a good light. So I've gotten some suggestions for some weird stuff that maybe doesn't, that kind of hinders that. And I will be critical of that. But again, you know, you got to go with whatever you want. And if you're home brewing it on your own terms, I mean, I'm not going to know what you're doing, but I'm just giving you suggestions of directions you can take with your world. And why not? Why not have crazy, weird stuff like this? And you know, I don't know if I'd play in it, but again, you can do it. I give you, you know, I'm not going to chastise you if you do something different or weird that you want to do. I'm just giving you suggestions of what you could be doing. And I have all the rules that I have can work for any of these settings, because I have from sword to laser gun, right? From horse to spaceship. It all ties together. It's all simple, but uses, you know, the dice mechanics that I have, the die ranks and the die rank results. So you got to just get that down. But now that I got that down, and it's just simple equational stuff, just divide by 5, and you get your answer right there for the die ranks. And then for the die rank results, you just whatever the number you got to beat above that, half of that is your die rank results, and that turns into die ranks that you can use for whatever the intent of it was for. Very simple dice system, but because I use that, I don't need to look at a bunch of charts. I don't need to create a bunch of charts. I don't need to. The only thing I ever look at in the rule book is the fumble chart, which is 1 through 6, because I just can't remember it. I think the reason I can't remember the fumble chart is because I get too silly and excited when they fumble. So my brain, when I laugh, I guess my IQ goes down quite a bit. One more movie here, but there's obviously a ton more, is The Mummy. The fun one with Brandon Fraser when he was really skinny and stuff. But this is a fun movie, and you know, and series, and you can do a mummy-ish thing. You know, it's got magic. It's, you know, 19th century, I guess. All kinds of crazy fun stuff. You know, silly characters. I've got guns and the thing, and funny looking faces like that. And you can do mummies, and obviously you could have Christianity in that. Again, the goal though is evangelism and church planting. So however, you know, you can have these as be missionaries that are adventurers going off. Maybe you could have them, you know, studying, finding artifacts for, you know, and returning to the church to see if they're evil or if they're demon possessed. You could go that route. But I would still highly recommend or chastise or whatever that you should at least have them go there to do mission work amongst the locals who worship the mummy or whatever, and plant a church there. You know, at least have that element in there with all the fun other stuff. Where they're doing mummy stuff and fighting mummies and fighting all their minions and magic and stuff like that. Where's those cool? They have some cool skeleton things they fought. I just want to see if they'll show it here somewhere. Some cool mini mummies or minion mummies or whatever. Well, anyway, you get the idea. So my point is, you can do all kinds of fun settings in Foil RPG as a Christian RPG. With plenty of adventure, plenty of gonzo-ness. I'm fine with that. I'm doing it in mine. And I'm a hardcore Calvinist, Christian nationalist, creation science. I do creation tours with homeschoolers at the Natural History Museum. What else? I go to Pastor John MacArthur's church. I'm probably a black sheep there, but I'm still a member. They haven't kicked me out. So yeah, you can do fun, crazy role-playing games. Okay, so you're not limited in a Christian RPG. You know. Okay, so that's my take on creating settings for the Lord RPG, as a GM, having fun, going crazy, get excited about what it is that you want to do as a GM. That's it. Okay, all right. In the game of life, and in this game, and in the RPG game, we gotta be Christians. We gotta bring that faith to the forefront. You know, work on it slowly, bit by bit, but do it. on the game of life. Roll holy dice.